I was only one of maybe 30 colliers on a face that would shift as a minimum of 20 tons per day, every day. There were men who was doing 40 tons a day. They were that good, and they were that strong. By the time I was 25 years old, I thought to myself, there must be an easier way of making a living than this. I qualified as a deputy, and from then I was an official in colliery, deputy and overman.
Our coal went right over the world, and when they actually developed the steam coal seam, and they realised then that there's a huge market for this, not just the Royal Navy, but all shipping all over the world. This was the finest coal you could have. I don't think I disliked anybody I worked with. You couldn't dislike somebody when your life depended on them, like. We used to have a big deployment board with everybody's name on it. You'd have all sorts of names, yeah. Polish, Yugoslavians, Lithuanians, Italians, all sorts of people working together. Very good reputation in South Wales for workers, because most of them were there.
8 brothers and 3 sisters. We used to have a double bed, and we used to sleep top and tail. We was the only coloured family there. There was a lot of races, and nobody bothered with us, like. There's a lot of jealousy and all with them. We were coloured, and we knew we was as good as theirs, or maybe better. That's the way you're going to think when you're a coloured person.
The Etty shaft was very unique. Big bend, about 3/4 of the way up in it. And the miners, they wouldn't go, if they knew they had to come up the Etty shaft, they wouldn't travel up in it. I think it was more frightening than anything. You used to see the men, it'd be comical to see. They'd be coming up the pit at 2:15, and then they'd be running down the hill, down at 2 or 3 pints to catch a bus to go up to Gethley.
The last day on strike in Britain was in this Lewismouth colliery. We went underground on the Monday and we came up on the Friday. We hadn't told anyone, and there was 28 of us who stayed down underground. One of the boys cracked and had to go out. It was hard. No blankets, no sleeping bags, we just slept in a manhole. It was really uncomfortable. We was trying to keep the mind open, that was all we was trying to do. The men looked after you, you looked after your buddy, we all looked after each other. If you didn't do that, the men wouldn't respect you, they wouldn't want you to work with them. Where I lived in my street, nearly every neighbour worked in the pit. The majority of men worked in the pit.
In the olden days, when it was my father and my grandfather, they would work in a coal face from the time they were a young lad right up until retirement age. There's not many miners lived up to 70. My grandfather and my father died from coal dust. They were getting out of breath a lot. And then later in life he ended up on oxygen. I think he retired at 60 and he died before he was 61. And my father, He had dust. By the age of 57, he was dead as well.
The colliery represented the whole community. There was at one time there was over 1,000 people working in Mardy, all living locally. Whatever was earned went back into the community. In football, rugby, cricket, darts, skittles, snooker. There was 13 chapels and churches and 13 clubs and pubs. My grandfather used to tell me that pubs years ago would be open at 6 o'clock in the morning, especially on payday. My great-grandfather, and he was killed through an accident in Mardy Colliery. He was taken out and taken home on a gambo. He was put in the front room, laid out on a table, and this was going back in 1911. And he was left on the table where he died overnight. He left 7 children. The oldest was 11, and the youngest was 3 months old.
Everyone, as far as I know, worked in the colliery. I didn't want anything else. I knew wherever I worked underground, we were safe. We knew that we could rely on somebody if anything did happen. I met so many different men underground. In Mardy Colliery alone, there was close on 1,800 men working there at one time. But I've got fond memories of Mardy and number 9 because of the comradeship, and the memories will last in my heart forever and ever.
My father became a miner, my uncles became miners, so it's the tradition of coal mining. All males in my family were coal miners. You also were working with men who you respected, who felt the same as you. Well, the sons and the grandsons of miners. I'm proud of it, always been proud of the fact that these are hard-working people. The majority of my work in life, we knelt because the seam was only about less than 4 feet high, Helmets slowly came in, we were wearing die caps. Often there were funerals of men that died quite young, but had pneumoconiosis. A big killer in the Rhondda. That coal contained dust that was extremely dangerous.
My father and my other brothers all worked in the colliery, so I went to the colliery. I dreaded the thought of it. I remember the first fortnight, all my hands were bleeding for days. The coal was so sharp, and I was only a young boy. You weren't used to hard work. I was going to finish the second day. I was afraid of the dark, because once you put your light out, you couldn't see your hand in front of you. You were liable to be killed every day because of the conditions you worked in. It was the Cambrian explosion where 26 were killed on the coal face. I had a brother killed in it.
You were sort of isolated from reality in a way, and so people would say things to you underground that they wouldn't dream of saying to you in any other circumstances. It was a completely different world, and I enjoyed it. I hated Margaret Thatcher. I didn't like Arthur Scargill either. I thought they were two people with massive egos and an agenda of their own. She wanted the destruction of the trades union movement. He wanted the trades unions to run the country.
There's no way I was going to cross a picket line. Never. I think he was a deputy overman, and he said, we're to cross picket lines with dignity. And I said then, I'll go back anywhere rather than cross a picket line. I'll go back and be a collier. There's no way I was going to cross a picket line.
We didn't think it would last that long, you know, but time went on, and then time went on, and then harder it got. It was carnage over there sometimes. I lived about a mile from Mithervale, but 5 o'clock in the morning, I could hear the police marching up the roads. They formed lines, connecting each other's arms. There was 100, 200 police forming a line. As the word got round that they was scabbing in Mithervale, you would have other men then, from the different valleys, then you would have 200, 300 pickets. And then they started getting a bit nasty here.
Scab, as far as I'm concerned, is a traitor to our community, traitor to our society. They're worse than the police were at the time. Scabs, I will never ever talk to a scab. I will never ever acknowledge a scab. I will walk out of a room. I wouldn't resort to violence, but in my younger days I certainly would have if I'd known or been involved with a scab.
And we'd gone up to Orgrave in Yorkshire. They chased us across a railway line, and an express train coming blowing you down, and they were behind on horseback and banging their shields with their truncheons, running after us. We went through a factory. They beat men up in the factory, and when we got to Asda's car park, they stopped and got the women and children there. There was a back entrance into the police station, and a single-decker bus pulled up. There was a policeman driving it. Well, when I looked in this, they'd taken the seats out, and it was all cages in there. And every cage had a man, some were unconscious. They peed themselves. There was blood running out on my shoes. And the abuse I was having off this driver to get from there.